Hello, welcome to another AIC video. A few weeks ago, I posted a video about this and another Lenovo Legion laptop doing a hardware showcase. Now I've had a few weeks to actually enjoy using the computer, and I wanted to go over just my thoughts on the system and kind of do an overview and a full review of it. So as we look at this system, gaming laptops have really hit a plateau when it comes to design. Kind of like small SUVs, because of government regulations, crash safety ratings, stuff like that. They've all kind of looked like the same egg. Gaming laptops, whether it's a Dell or Alienware, HP Omen, a Legion, Acer, Asus, they all have very similar overall designs. You have your 15, 16, 17-inch screen. You have a big caboose back here with a top opening hinge, so the screen's on top of the laptop and stuff behind it. You have the big caboose for all the cooling back here. You get them fancied up with the RGB back here along the front edge, logo. But I mean, if you're getting a gaming laptop, it's a gaming laptop. That's okay. They're heavy by necessity because of the cooling systems, the weight of the copper in there. They typically have bigger screens. You get a full keyboard. One thing I would like is if they came with option with a centered keyboard on these instead of a full keyboard. But I understand that for a lot of people, the number pad is one of those things that is a desired aspect of the system. But for somebody like me who does a lot of typing, I would like to see a centered keyboard. On this one, we have some upward facing speakers. We also have some downward facing speakers. And overall, these tend to be more of a desktop replacement than something that you would really be carrying around a lot. I mean, this thing weighs like 7 or 8 pounds. It's pretty heavy. And this alone is the power brick, and it weighs more than my ThinkPad P1. Like, I wish I was joking. This weighs more than my other laptop, and it's just the power brick. One thing with this one, the newer model with the 5080, is the ports are along the side instead of having some ports in the back. I prefer the ports in the back, I think, on a system like this, especially one that, you know, it's more of a desktop replacement than it is a mobile workstation. It leads for a cleaner desktop. Again, that's personal preference. But with this one, you get more stuff hanging off the sides versus straight back for that cleaner look. One thing I don't like about this is you can see it is a terrible fingerprint magnet. We look at the lid again. Again, just a few weeks of use and I have absolutely caused it to be a smeared mess. It is not the best. When it comes to, this was my personal laptop, I'd get a skin for this in a heartbeat, just like I do on any of my other systems. So, but yeah, this aluminum has definitely taken a bit of a toll with my greasy fingers. All right, so one of my favorite features on the Lenovo Legions that I've either personally owned or tested is the function button. I know this probably doesn't seem like a big deal for a lot of people, but I find it very useful for me to quickly remember what functions are, because a lot of these you just don't use all the time, and so having them be visible when you need to push the buttons, or if you're in a dark room or something like that, because your fingers, you know, I'm a touch typist, and these usually aren't functions that my fingers are just memorized to touch when I'm doing stuff. So you hit the function key and it lights up the keys of that has functions. So like the up and down arrow key deal with the keyboard brightness. So you can adjust the keyboard brightness on here, or change the RGB settings to different things. So it's very useful, that I find, for the laptops, and I wish it was something that Lenovo would extend to the rest of their higher end laptops, especially their ThinkPads. I don't think it'd cost very much money to do. It'd be just what, a BIOS edit to do that, but it would be very nice. Speaking of which, the built-in RGB is very fun, very gamery, totally not necessary, though I do appreciate that it has been added to the Legion space. So this is an app that's kind of taken some settings out of Lenovo Vantage and some of the third-party software that they've had in the past, and one of which is in here you have the settings for RGB. Previously you had to use a Corsair software to control the lighting, and it was downright terrible and very buggy. Crashed a lot on me. And so this software is a great addition. You also saw that you can change which GPU mode you're in here. Some of them do require you to reboot the system, but that is in there as well. There's a misclick prevention for when you are, it disables the Windows key. We have our library of games in here that you can launch from and things like that. So nice piece of software included with the laptop. This does come with a 2.5 gig NIC. That wasn't something I was sure in the last video. I did go ahead and look that up, and it is 2.5 gig, which when I was copying files and stuff over to this for installing games, sure made my life a lot easier to have that interface on here to copy those files over. Also has Wi-Fi 7, though, of course. When you're copying big files and stuff, I prefer to have a physical connection. It just is faster and less prone to interference. The Wi-Fi 7 does give me pretty good advantage, or pretty good coverage in my house, which I was able to take advantage of. So the screen on this is the OLED screen, 2560 by 1600 resolution, 16 inch, and it is downright beautiful. SDR on here looks amazing. It is one of the best looking screens I've seen, except for one thing, and that it is a gloss screen instead of a matte screen, which for me is a killer because I am old and blind and I'd like to have a lot of light on, which means a lot of reflections, and you can probably see me in the reflections there pretty clearly in the dark sections of the screen, and that for me is just a killer. I wish they could have done this screen. I haven't dealt with a lot of OLED screens in the past, but they've all been glossy, so I'm guessing that's part of their features. They have to be a glossy screen to take advantage of what they do. And so yeah, it's just not my favorite thing with this laptop, especially with so many games having dark backgrounds. It makes it hard for me because I get so distracted by staring at myself in the screen, and I'm doing it literally right now while I'm recording this, watching myself talk at you. So just something to keep in mind. So as I mentioned in this video already, I wish the keyboard was centered. It is a pretty darn good keyboard. The depth of press on them is better than on my P1, though they require a little bit more force to press. It's a good keyboard. It's a great keyboard. I just wish it was centered for my workflow, because that's what my preference is. I don't use numpads for hardly anything, and the few times that I need one, I have a USB plug-in one that I use, because not even my desktop has a keyboard with a numpad on it, so I just have that as an accessory. And so great keyboard. So if you're using this for productivity, if you do a lot of typing and you can put up with it not being centered, it is a great option. One thing I was surprised about with this laptop is the speakers. It has 4 speakers. It's a big laptop, so there's plenty of room for sound management of those speakers, and they're not that good compared to my P1. Now, I will say they're not bad. In fact, you could say they're pretty okay, but when my P1, which is smaller, with just 2 speakers, which are both just down-firing speakers, have more bass and a wider sound stage, you just hear more of the music and things you're listening to. My expectations for this were a lot higher. Now, my memory of the Legion that I had was that the speakers were really good, and it might just been that I was used to other ThinkPads at the time, but This one was a little bit disappointing. I have some DRM free music here. All right, so there's not a lot of bass. That's the thing that surprised me. With 4 speakers, a lot of room for the sound chambers and stuff, not a lot of bass. Surprising little. And the top ends get kind of cut off. I don't think most people will be that affected by that, especially if you're doing any like serious gaming. You're probably going to be wearing headphones and stuff because you need to be able to hear where people are coming from, and you just can't do that with speakers being in front of you instead of over your ears. I was just surprised that you could have the P1 have such amazing sound versus this having less sound. Again, I don't know what else to say about it. I was just surprised. So I did a video showing the hardware on this. I'll clip that in here. Upgradeability, you have your RAM, storage, Wi-Fi card, pretty standard stuff, to be honest. Nothing, mind-blowing. Socketed CPUs are long dead. This coming with 32 gigs of RAM, 2 1 terabyte SSDs. Unless you're going to have some really massive game library, I don't think most people are going to feel the need to upgrade this immediately, though it is there for you down the road to be able to do. This is a pretty high-end laptop. You're not going to be buying the low end and upgrading it, really. You're going to buy the higher end because the cost isn't as big a difference. So, but again, down the road, you'll have that option. So, obviously, this is a gaming laptop. Gaming performance is pretty spectacular. I'm going to bring up a game here. We're going to go ahead and bring up a Cyberpunk 2077 and talk about it a little bit. All right, turn down the volume so I don't have to talk over it. So we have our video settings on. Ray tracing is set to ultra. Crowd density is high. Field of view is 60. Motion blur is high. Everything's set to high or ultra. If we go back up here, we have DLSS super resolution on. Frame generation is off. Let's go ahead and run benchmark and see where we get. Helps if I plug it in and we're not running off of battery saver mode. We're getting 75. I was surprised there for a second. We're getting 75, 74, over 70 frames a second. I put everything, I turned off DLSS completely off and had the ray tracing on. I think it's like Psycho or whatever the the level is. I was getting like 30 frames per second, which is pretty low. But we have the settings turned up pretty heavy, and we're getting over the 60 frames per second. You definitely could play with this more and get better frames or more frames, but of course you're going to sacrifice some of the quality. So I think as long as you're getting above that 60 frames per second in something like this, you're probably going to be happy with that. Let's go ahead and go back to say, let's turn that off, and we'll turn this up to Psycho. Apply, and then we'll run the benchmark again. But yeah, it's impressive. But you can also hear just how loud those fans are. They're not quiet. Now, normally I have a riser to put this on to lift it up a little bit so it can breathe a little bit better. It actually quiets it down a little bit, or changes the sound, I guess, to one I find slightly less annoying. But, don't expect quiet gaming with this system. But until we loaded the game, it was really quiet. So if you're just using this for normal productivity stuff, you can expect a fairly quiet experience until you start loading up some games. So yeah, we're in that 30, not quite 40 frames per second range in this benchmark. So go ahead and let this finish and we will go over my conclusions. All right, so for the conclusion, I brought out my P1 because I feel like it's important to recognize that whenever you're buying a laptop, there's going to be compromises, a lot of compromises. And unlike a desktop, where as long as you buy a big enough case, you can shove just about anything you want in there, you're not going to have issues. With a laptop, you're limited to the CPU you're buying because they're socketed and you can't upgrade them. You're limited often to the GPU that's in the system because, again, not upgradable. You're limited to the type of RAM and the amount of RAM sometimes with soldered systems that have soldered memory. You're limited on screen size. You're limited on keyboard. You have to focus on what is the important thing for you in that laptop. Now, for me personally, I wanted as much power as I could get in a portable system. And so this laptop weighs less. The power bricks, I mean, so this is a power brick for the Legion over here off to the right. And here's the power brick for my P1. Sorry. It is a fraction of the size of the power brick for the Legion. I probably fit 2.5, almost 3 of the P1s into the Legions. This is thicker, it's heavier, but it's a lot more powerful. The CPU, they're both Core Ultra 9s. This one gave us a score of 34,000, 62,000, nearly twice as fast of a CPU than benchmarks. Because it has a higher CPU wattage. It can push harder, it has better cooling. And so if you're doing anything that's really CPU intensive, obviously this is going to be the better choice. GPU, again, this has a better GPU. It's a generation newer. It's a step up, a 4070 versus a 4080. Again, also a lot more wattage. It can do more because it can cool more. But that also means that this laptop weighs twice as much as this laptop does. This one doesn't fit in my backpack very well, where this one does. There are a lot of compromises when it comes to laptops, and you need to figure out what is the compromise you're willing to make. For me personally, in the end, portability with performance was my goal, not pure performance. If you need pure performance, this is a killer machine if it's in your budget. They're not cheap, obviously, but they actually, price-wise, are within spitting distance of each other. At least what I paid for this one and what this one currently sells for. So, you know, price-wise, you're splitting hairs. It really comes down to what you need. Now, for me personally, I feel like I made the right choice. I needed the portability more than I needed the performance. But man, if you need the performance, buy the Legion. It is a stellar laptop that I highly recommend you buying. If I could have every laptop in the world, I'd have both of them, obviously. Because sometimes I do like to play games, and this one does better than this one. It just does, obviously. So, anyways, I hope you found this informative. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.